It is time for a new wardrobe video, and you might know that I've been trying to have a sustainable and minimalist wardrobe for almost 9 years now, but this has kind of changed throughout the years a little bit, like my approaches, what I do, the number of clothes I own. And so today I do want to share 5 practices that I use to maintain and evolve my sustainable minimalist wardrobe to the best I can, but also these practices help me feel happy and content with my wardrobe. They help me stay frugal. They help me follow my values and make clothes and my wardrobe a fun part of my life instead of it feeling like a task or overwhelming in any way. So I'd say let's just get started. And first, let me just show you my current wardrobe so you know what we're talking about. My wardrobe lives in these 2 drawers, plus there's some clothes and shoes where we enter our apartment, like outerwear. But in here, we have my underwear, we have some stuff that I rarely use, just kind of formal stuff, my t-shirts, my sweaters, a self-knitted sweater, and to be really honest, there are like 3 sweaters and 2 t-shirts in the laundry right now. And then we also have some clothes here. Here are my pants. Here are some like random things. Thin socks that I rarely use, a sun hat, long underwear. And here's my ski pants. And here usually I have my scarf and my rain pants during summer. Here I also have like some other stuff. But that's my wardrobe. That's what we're talking about. As I said, except for outerwear and the things that are in the laundry right now. So the first and maybe the most important lesson I learned during this past almost decade, and one of the best practices I follow to keep my wardrobe aligned with my values, sustainable and minimal, is that it is a process and a practice. So instead of thinking about a sustainable minimalist wardrobe as something you can like tick off your to-do list or your bucket list, or kind of just take one day out of your life once every few months and make your wardrobe perfect again, I think we should understand our wardrobes as something that evolves with us, and not just over the decades, but also over the months. Now, with this, I do not mean buying new things every single week to adjust your wardrobe to what you like right now, and we will talk more about that later. But I do think that keeping it's too strict, like making your minimalist wardrobe once and then trying to live with that for the rest of your life, or even building a capsule wardrobe for a season and expecting to not need anything to change for the next 90 days. Sometimes, at least for me, that can make it feel more overwhelming and harder. Instead, what I try to do is accept that life changes, accept that my needs change, my body possibly changes. Now, I personally am lucky enough for my body to have the same size, have had the same size over the past 10 years, but I know that's not the reality for everyone. And I think our clothes should fit our bodies and not our bodies should fit into our clothes. So our clothes are allowed to change if our bodies change. And to accept that, but of course, because I say it's a practice, it's not just let it go and do whatever, it's a practice. And what we focus on instead of like making it once and expecting it to be perfect is following our values, and maybe you can even call them rules that we set for ourselves, but make them practices and rules that can change and evolve and adapt and make your wardrobes work with your life. Maybe putting it a little different, to look at it from a different perspective, is do not take it too seriously. And I try to do that as well. Because in the past, I've tried to have these like color schemes and strict rules of 3 pair of pants and I don't need more, only having 1 item like this and things like that. And I felt that it restricted me. And even though I lived with that for maybe a year, and then once I had a uniform of having only blue jeans and gray sweaters, it changed again. But now looking forward, instead of trying out new uniforms and rules and strict color palettes, I do want to just kind of follow my feelings a little bit more. So if an item comes my way and it would not have really fit into my wardrobe a year ago, I still consider bringing it in, especially if it's like in a sustainable way, as in a clothing swap or getting it for free, which I want to talk about in a second. Then I can try out new things. I can put clothes away that I don't want to wear right now, but maybe just not declutter it right now to make sure that I have them if I want to bring them back. I can try out things. I can play with my personal style. And I've actually made a video about exactly that I'm gonna link you up here to check out. So to conclude this first practice, it's understanding that our lives and our wardrobes are changing with us, and finding rules and values that work with that help us, but that do not make us feel restricted and like we have to figure it out right now and then we cannot change it for the rest of our lives. And the second thing I learned is actually something I've made a video about once, and it didn't do well on YouTube, even though I thought it was a brilliant idea. I'm gonna link it up here for you as well. What I'm talking about is a wardrobe audit. So what I did is I looked at my wardrobe and I came up with a few categories, and then I tried to put all of the clothes I own into these categories to see how I'm doing sustainability wise. So the categories I think I had was, did I buy this piece new or secondhand? Is it something I've had in my wardrobe for a really long time, or is it rather new? Is this thing made out of plastic or natural fibers? And now I don't really remember if I had other categories, but you can check out the video. But I think this is really, really interesting because yes, my values normally would be only natural fibers, only secondhand, keeping things for as long as possible until they fall apart. And by actually auditing your wardrobe, you can see how much this picture or these values that you have in your head actually are reflected in your wardrobe. Because when I look at my wardrobe now, I'd say a lot of it is actually not secondhand, but from sustainable brands, but I got those things gifted. Most of my wardrobe is older than 1 year, but I don't really have any pieces that are older than 5 years, just a few. Then I do have mostly natural fibers, but there are some pieces that contain plastics at least. Sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it's just what it is. And the idea of this is just to get to know your wardrobe, to get to know your values, to learn where you actually are in this process of having the wardrobe you want to have. It's not to shame yourself, it's not to feel miserable, but it's just to have a realistic picture and to learn. Maybe you also learn new things. Maybe you learn that you want to have only natural fibers, but you feel just in your life workout gear that consists of plastic just works so much better, and you have these outdoor clothes and everything is just made out of plastic. So maybe you have to rethink your values or rethink the way you think about yourself and your wardrobe, and realize that maybe plastics make a lot of sense in your wardrobe, but then on the other hand, realizing that you just have a lot of random plastic and you don't want it actually, and it doesn't make sense, might make you more focused when buying new things or getting them at a clothing swap, wherever, to actually check the tags and make sure you're not bringing more plastic into your wardrobe. And then the third practice that is really important to me, and that luckily I've been very successful at in the past few years, is trying to get your clothes as like circular economy style as possible. For me, that means the first choice is clothing swaps and getting clothes for free that other people do not want anymore. In my mind, this is better than secondhand, because it's actually usually a direct thing. So it's just person that doesn't need it anymore to person that wants it now, instead of buying it secondhand, which is a whole industry, which is more sustainable than buying it new, but still has some really problematic parts of shipping a lot of unusable garments to other continents where they end up in landfill and destroy the economy there. So I think the absolute best thing to do if you need new clothes is getting them directly from a person that does not need them anymore. And then of course, secondhand shopping and buying new from sustainable brands, but then also just keeping in mind that using your clothes longer will always make them more sustainable, and not buying something, not bringing in something new is always the most sustainable option. So I think this is a practice that can be really, really frustrating because a lot of us struggle with it. Sometimes even if we want to buy new clothes, it's hard to find the exact pieces that we want, but especially if we want to buy them secondhand or even get them for free from a clothing swap or from exchanging clothes with friends, family, finding them on the street, or just all the things that are not buying, that are not involving money. It's really, really hard to find the exact pieces that you want, to find pieces that you fit even. And if you have a changing body, it can be so frustrating because you feel like you need new clothes every single month. And by getting them secondhand or in a circular economy way is most likely more work, even though it sometimes costs a lot less money. But that said, I do want to share with you right here quickly before the in and out video of this month that I found some new things at a clothing swap. This wool sweater, actually, it has 20% plastic, which I don't really like, but that's one of the things. It was there, I like it. It's not perfect, but I see myself using it a lot. But then also what I find is a pair of hiking pants. And I've been thinking about buying a pair of hiking pants, but they're usually made out of plastic, so I didn't really want to. They're usually very expensive, and I looked up secondhand options, but I didn't really. And then I found them at a clothing swap. Now they are also made from plastic, but I was thinking about the functionality and thinking about buying them anyway, so I'm glad I found them at a clothing swap, and for me in a free way, so I can try them out, I can see if they work for me, they work in my life, and that's amazing, and I was really lucky. I also found another sweater that I first thought doesn't really fit into my life, but on the other hand, I liked it. And because it's free, because it's 100% cotton, because I can give it to someone else if I don't need it anymore, I took it with me and I'm going to try it out for myself. But when we talk about buying new things, I think it's always kind of hard because we know not getting anything new would be the best. Getting in as secondhand as possible without involving the actual secondhand industry would be the next best thing to do than buying secondhand, or as a worst thing, like buying it new, preferably sustainable, but that's expensive. And so what do we do? What's the measurement here? What's the thing we should do? And there's been this report from, I think, Hot and Cool something. I'm gonna link it down below, and I think it's really interesting. It considers many, many different things. But the overall tip they gave at the end, and maybe this is not new to you, but if you do one thing to make sure that your wardrobe is in line with the climate goals of warming our planet not more than 1.5 degrees, then it's limiting your purchasing of new items to 5 clothing things per year. And that's rather simple. And of course, it's not everything. Of course, everything is more complex, and you can care for your clothes, you can mend them, you can make sure how you wash them, you can buy them secondhand, all of these things. But that is like a solid number to remember that might help you keep your wardrobe in the sustainable boundaries of our planet. Now, with 5 new things, I think underwear and socks and things like that do not count. Especially if they count, my wardrobe is not within these boundaries because I kind of just need more new pieces of underwear every single year. It's just like between bras and socks and underwear, there's just going to be more than 5 pieces. On the other hand, actual new pieces of clothing that's not underwear, I just have got 1 this year, which was a PR sample, but other than that, no new clothing in my wardrobe. And that's maybe because I got a lot of clothing during the past year from brands, a lot meaning 10 pieces per year or so. But I hope to be able to continue this way during the next few years, and I'm interested to see how it's going because, as I said in the beginning, I think it's very much so a process, a practice. So your wardrobe is not determined to be sustainable by looking at it one day. But it's only sustainable if you keep your sustainability practices over decades in the best case. The 4th practice that I already mentioned a little bit, and I think is also really important and something we don't do enough today, is mending our clothes. especially when we have favorite clothes. Like we want to wear them, but then they wear out quicker. And especially with a small wardrobe, with a minimalist wardrobe, I do realize that it's so fast and the clothes have holes and things like that, lose their shapes. And if whenever possible, I try to mend them, I try to fix them, I try to make sure to use them for longer. Something that does help is washing them less regularly, air drying instead of like tumble drying them. And as I said, mending holes and things like that. But a thing that I also did in the past few months, twice, is cutting off the sleeves of t-shirts. And I did that because one of the shirts lost its shape, and the other shirt, I just did not like the sleeves on them. So I think we need to be careful when we just kind of cut up our pieces, because we don't want to make them useless. But if it guarantees, or if the chances are really high that we can use it more after altering them, I think this is a great thing to do. I've also altered a lot of pants in the past, making them like smaller at the waist, usually in my case, or making, pants shorter. I haven't done that personally really, but I think that's something that you sometimes can do for a little money, even if you bring them to a tailor, and which makes it a lot easier to shop secondhand if you have the option to alter the pieces if they don't fit perfectly. So I think this is a practice, and I know it can be daunting, it can be exhausting, it can be annoying to use the time to fix something that's kind of already broken, and maybe we just want to throw them away and move on to something new, buy a new piece of clothing. But I think especially if it's our favorite pieces, like, don't we want to give them the love? Don't we want to invest a little bit of time to make them like part of our wardrobe for another year or two? That would be amazing. And it's definitely a sustainable practice that saves money, that makes stuff so much more sustainable, and that can just also make us happy, because sometimes garments get even more character and it just makes them great. Let me show you an example. I have this sweater, and I think I used it for soap making, which was a mistake, but it had holes. And so I started embroidering these leaves on the holes. And whenever this sweater will get another hole in the future, I'll be sure to embroider another colorful leaf on the hole to make sure that I can use it longer. And I think it looks actually cute, and you don't see these leaves all the time, but they're small, they're there, and they're not perfect. But this is an example, and I also learned a new skill, and so I think it's an amazing practice to pick up and train and practice. So we have some really changing light, but I hope it's still watchable, So the fifth and last, but I think so important practice is developing personal style and learning about what we actually use and need and have in our everyday life. So there is this one example. I have this short on YouTube. It's actually now my most watched video. It has over 300,000 views, and I showcase my minimalist wardrobe in there. And I get a lot of weird comments. Most of them are just like, oh, this is ugly. Well, yeah, you can think that way. But then a lot of people also comment like, duh, this is so much clothing, I have way less. And yes, possibly you have less. But my wardrobe at the time was really, really small. And I'm pretty sure that at least half of the people that comment on my video and say that they have a lot less clothing actually have more. Because I think most of us do not know how much clothing we have. Marie Kondo described this in her book, and I realized that whenever I talk to people in my everyday life as well, they're like, oh, I just have a few jeans and a few t-shirts and that's just everything I wear. But then when you ask a bit more, or when they think a bit more, when you look at their possessions, it's like, oh, but they also have sports gear. They do also have 10 sweaters that they rarely wear. And then they definitely have like 10 pairs of shoes and 5 jackets. And honestly, they also have 5 t-shirts that they don't really wear anymore. And they don't just have jeans, they also have like some chicer trousers. Now it's getting too bright. But I think you kind of get what I mean. I think sometimes we are just not aware what we use. In our minds, we're wearing a t-shirt and jeans every single day. And if that's correct, then that's great. Then you should just maybe declutter everything else. I don't know, but definitely only buy t-shirts and jeans from now on. So what I want to say with this is I think it's important to get to know what we actually wear, what we actually like wearing, and then also what we need to wear maybe, because not all of us wear the things we want to wear every single day, and I totally get that. And so I think an important practice, and it's again something that we need to practice over the years and just continuously work on, is learning what kind of clothes we like wearing and we actually use in our everyday life, because that is important when we look at our wardrobe and think about decluttering some things, but it's also important when we're buying new items, when we look at our wardrobe and think, oh, I'm really lacking some dress shirts, but maybe we don't have the occasions to wear them, so we don't need 5 of them. I don't know. Learning what we actually use and learning what we actually like wearing can keep us from buying and bringing so many things into our wardrobes that we regret, but it can also keep us from decluttering things that we actually use a lot. And now with that, I think I'm at the end of this video. I'm sure there's so much more to say about sustainable wardrobes. And of course, there's the whole thing about how to care for your clothes the most sustainable and how to find like sustainable brands to buy from if you want to buy something new. But in general, I think it's very important to have fun with it. Make it feel as good as possible and not like a chore or something overwhelming, and just getting to know our needs and our values so that we can actually make informed decisions going forward. Thank you so much for watching. I do want to link you another video here that you can check out. And other than that, I do want to say thank you so much to my patrons. They do get an extra podcast episode every single week. And so I do hope to maybe see you there or in my next video or right here. Goodbye.